Hey guys, today I'm in the greenhouse talking about the ultimate fire starter. This fire starter is by all means my favorite one to use when hiking and camping. Now, as you can see, I love growing bonsai, I love working in my garden, but the thing that I really love is hiking and camping. So I'm going to show you how to make what I call the ultimate fire starter. It will work even if they're completely submerged in water, and they cost almost nothing to make, less than a penny each. They're super cheap. So let's get started. I'll show you how to put these together. Super simple, anybody can do it. And it's great to have on the trail, hiking, camping, even around the house. If you need a fire starter, if you're burning yard debris or yard waste, you can use them around the house, and it sure beats those overpriced fire starters you're going to buy online or at your local store. Now I'll start by showing some of the things you're going to need to put all this together. Some type of stove, which I love these Dr. House stoves. I originally bought this stove and had it shipped directly from South Korea. I had to think for a minute. There's South Korea, and they did not sell it online here at the time, but since then, and that's been over 5 years ago, these are now being sold on Amazon. So I'll put a link in the description if you like these. I think these are a little bit more stylish. They're better made, and they're solid metal. Also, you're going to need to set up a double boiler type of system, so you'll need an inner stainless steel mug like this, pot, pan, whatever you have, and an outer boiler, and then you'll fill, of course, the outer boiler with water. You're going to need some measuring cups because there is a little bit of measuring to go along with this. So aluminum foil you'll need that. I'll explain that in just a bit. And also there's an optional item, either parchment paper or wax paper, and I'll explain that as well. So I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things you'll need to put this together. Now, before I get started on the actual process of putting it together, I wanted to provide an idea for something else that you can collect from the forest from evergreen trees. I can make a separate video about this, but this is called fat wood. It's a very special type of wood that grows on evergreen trees. You can collect it yourself, and it won't cost you anything to do that, but you have to know how to collect it. I'll make a separate video sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks to let you know how to do that. But fat wood is something you might want to store in your bags unless you're extremely weight limited. We do occasionally go on hikes where we have to go down to the exact ounce where we're not going overweight, because that backpack with an extra pound or two can make a huge difference. So fat wood is another item that can be life-saving, but that's not the fire starter we're making today. We're creating something the size of a coin and even lighter than a coin, and it can be stored away in your backpack. Like I said, it's completely waterproof and will work every time and give you a solid burn to start a fire even when it's raining. Now, next you're going to need 2 main components to make this work as far as making it extremely flammable. One, you're going to need to waterproof it with wax, and I prefer Gulf wax. It melts easy, it's easy to work with. It is a paraffin wax, and that's why we have the double boiler, because if this gets overheated, it could ignite and cause a flame. Of course, you could just cover it up, but it's just so much better to be safe and have the double boiler. So that's one of the components. The next component is fuel. And I've tried a lot of different components because I wanted to experiment, and I discovered there's one thing you cannot use to make this. It doesn't work. Or actually there's 2 things. One is very dangerous and one does not work at all because of the way it works. But I will tell you, the main fuel source you need to have to mix this together to make it work perfectly. Now, yesterday I did some experimentation with alternate fuel sources, and I discovered there's one thing you cannot use to make these, and that's denatured alcohol. When the denatured alcohol combines with your wax, it just completely turns into a big blob. So denatured alcohol, rubbing alcohol will not work. I discovered that the hard way. But what will work is just common lighter fluid or any type of kerosene. These 2 will work better. Most people have just common charcoal lighter fluid around their house. They can pick it up easier at their grocery store. So we're going to make these today with this. I made some yesterday with this denatured K1 kerosene, which is a very pure form of kerosene. But we'll test both. We'll test not only the kerosene-made fire starters, but also the charcoal lighter varieties. And again, you can just store these in your pack, and then when you need a fire out on the trail, this is so light you won't even know it's in there, but it works perfectly. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start our Dr. House stove. Super hot already. We're going to set up our double boiler setup here. We start with just a regular larger size pot. And then we're going to have our inner pot, this smaller cup. I know it's a little bit off screen there. And then we're going to put, excuse me, I know that's really noisy there. We're going to put our Gulf wax in our inner cup and melt it down. So just remember to do this slowly, carefully, and make sure you have plenty of water in here so the wax doesn't overheat and self-ignite. Now, I like this Gulf wax. As I said, it comes in these large type blocks. We're just going to use 1 block for this process, but you could use candles, you could use beeswax, any type of wax you have around your home already. So you could use some old table candles or anything like that. But I would advise maybe ordering some of this, because this is a really good bargain and you can use it on a lot of different projects. So I'll put a link in the description to that as well. But as you can see, just a large block. We're going to take our inner boiler setup and we're going to melt this one so we can start making our our ultimate fire starters. Now, while I'm waiting for our wax to melt, I want to talk about one more fuel source that I've read about. I've never tried it myself. So if you don't have lighter fluid, if you don't have kerosene, you could try something as simple as petroleum jelly. You're going to need to do the same thing with the double boiler method, because you have to kind of turn the petroleum jelly into more of a liquid. So it's going to have to be in a liquid state. I haven't tried it myself, but I can tell you that if you don't have the first two fuel sources, try this. Do a little bit of experimentation, because you may have to increase your levels. I've got these measuring cups because there has to be a very specific measurement. Not difficult at all, but you have to measure it properly, and that's why I'm going to, as soon as our wax melts, I'm going to measure it and then we'll add our fuel source. Now, the finished product is going to be a white color like this, and yesterday I thought if you're camping in snow and you drop one of these in the snow, it may be hard to see because it'll be just blend right in. I tried food coloring. It did not work. As you can see, it's just kind of spread across the front of it. So while we're waiting on our wax to boil or wax to melt, I'll say that one thing you can do if you're camping and it's all snow and you don't want to misplace these, you want to be able to see them easy in all your packing gear, is you can melt crayons, and this is what I've read, that melted crayons mixed in with a mixture will help them be more visible. So maybe an orange crayon, a yellow crayon will be much easier to see in an environment where you're surrounded by snow. So just remember, this is the final product, but again, I'm going to show you how to properly mix the Kemp fuel. We'll do a test on kerosene versus the lighter fluid, and I did read online, I wanted to know exactly what lighter fluid is. Lighter fluid is not exactly kerosene, it's something quite different. So even though they seem similar, there's a difference there. So let's do that experimentation. Still waiting on it to boil, to melt our wax. The water in the greenhouse was super cold as we had a freezing night last night. So we'll take a look at this in just a second and go through our process of making everything, which only takes minutes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have some measuring cups, and there's a very specific reason for that. We're going to take our interior boiler from our double boiler, and we're going to get an exact measurement. We're a little bit over half a cup, close to 3/4 of a cup. So we're going to add another 3/4 to our mixture. I'm just going to measure this with our fuel. Our wax is going to harden there pretty quickly, so I want to put it back in our double boiler setup. I'm going to take some of our lighter fluid. As I said yesterday, I actually used the K1 purified kerosene, so a little bit different than just common lighter fluid. Now we're going to add 3/4 of a cup to our measuring cup, and we're going to combine the two. So basically the mixture is a 50-50 mixture. 50% of our fuel, lighter fluid, kerosene, whatever you're going to use, and 50% of our wax. So we were right at the 3/4 mark, or right below it. So I'm going to try to get as close to a 50-50 mix as possible. Our flame has been cut off because I don't want to take a chance on any ignition. So I'm going to take this back off. I'm going to mix the two together. And now we have a mixture of hot wax and our lighter fluid. As you can see, still very purified. As I said, I found out yesterday that you cannot do this with denatured alcohol. I'm assuming with any type of alcohol. So the water is still very hot. It's going to keep it in a very liquid state. That's what we need. And so I'm going to go on to the next step. Now, I showed you what we need to make these, but it's basically just makeup rounds, cotton makeup rounds. The cheaper the better, because you don't need anything super expensive. You need to be able to tear them apart, so they don't need to be too thick or specially put together. I've seen some that looks like they've been, I guess, like sewn together in some method or stamped together with a special stamp, but just the cheaper ones will do at your local dollar store. If you can't find them around where you live, I'll put a link in the description of these, but there's 100 in here, so you would have months and months, possibly years, depending on how often you camp or need to start fires, of these super simple, super effective fire starters. So let me show you how to make these real quickly. Now, I like using non-stick aluminum foil to do this with, so originally I had our paper towel down there to prevent the table from being coated with wax, but I'm just going to take a very large pair of tweezers, put it into our solution, sinks to the bottom pretty quickly, and when we take it back out, I'm just going to let it kind of drip a little bit to remove some of the excess wax, and then put it on our non-stick aluminum foil. You're going to just do that over and over, and just kind of make sure you don't have too much wax on it. Let it drip just for a sec. Whoop, made a little mistake there. Still easy to get back out of the fluid. Just make sure of that. And I'm going to make about 10 of these. and then we'll go on to the testing phase outside. Let's see, this is number 3. So like I said, these are super simple to make, but they will last for a long time. Now there's another reason for the parchment paper or the wax paper, and I'll show you that in just 1 second after I get through putting these through the system of making them. So I've made 10 of these made with the lighter, charcoal lighter fluid, and then I have 10 from yesterday just made with the common K1 kerosene that you use on kerosene lanterns. These are completely dry, but it doesn't take a long time for these to dry. Just give it about 15 minutes and then they're ready to go. Next, I'm going to talk about the wax paper and the parchment paper and ways to store these in case you're camping in a certain time of year where temperature may be an issue. Now here's a quick tutorial on why I have the parchment paper, and wax paper will work. I think aluminum foil will work, but I think it's a little bit easier to work with parchment paper. What you're going to do with that is you're going to cut the parchment paper into slightly larger square pieces than the ones you've already made. Let's see, this is today's, this is yesterday's. So you can just space them like this in a sandwich bag, and the reason for this, you could put 10 together so you'd be able to light fire 10 different times, is that if you're camping in a really hot time of year, these can become semi-melted a little bit, especially if you're camping, you know, June, July, August, September. So they can kind of melt together and they'll be all stuck together. So I'd recommend using some kind of either parchment paper, wax paper, or even the aluminum foil just to keep them separated in hotter temperatures. In the wintertime, you don't have to worry about this because these are going to be solid like this. They're not going to melt. But again, just 1 or 2 days in the summer and they'll be all stuck together. So that's just one tip that I use, that I'll tell you about on using these, is if you're camping in the summer. Now, about carrying them in your backpack, I would just say something, if you're pressed for space, and we always are because we don't want to add a lot of weight and a lot of bulk to our backpacks, is using something as simple as a sandwich bag. But if you're not pressed for space, you could use like this little miniature peanut butter jar, and you could stack them in there, and you'd literally have months or even years of fire starters stored away, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But again, I still would do the parchment paper or wax paper in between each one. All right, so we've been close to 15 minutes on these. These are our kerosene, excuse me, these are the lighter fluid, and these are our kerosene. We'll take 2 of each out to the fire pit and just show you how easy they are to light. You could do it with something as simple as just a spark from a sparking lighter you might have, or in my case, since there's a little bit of a breeze blowing today, I'm going to use our fuel torch if I've got some left there. But you could use matches. These light so easily. So let me take it out to the fire pit and I'll demonstrate exactly how to do that. All right, so we've got our left hand lighter fluid and right hand is our kerosene. So let's do the kerosenes first. Let's demonstrate how they are completely waterproof. I'm going to submerge them, bring them back out of the water. And then the way these work is the cotton is protected by the wax. So you're just going to break them apart or tear them apart like this. Takes a little bit of force there to tear them, but see, now you have exposed the interior of the cotton. Let's move this one out of the way, and I'll show you how easy these are to light. So it just took a very brief split second of flame. As you can see, it lit right up, and we have a nice fire started, probably anywhere from a 4 to 6 minute burn. All right, so our kerosene is still burning. As you can see, that would be great on using it on some wet tinder. If you were caught in a rainstorm, these would be a true lifesaver. So let's move those out of the way. Still burning after, I think it was 4.5 minutes. So these are the ones made with, there's still not quite as firm as I like it. The ones from yesterday, they're quite a bit more, you know, like I said, 15 minutes, but actually overnight would be even better. So let's light these up. These were made with the lighter fluid. The first one's with kerosene, so let's just do a quick shot of flame. Lights almost instantly. And again, these were saturated or submerged in the water as well. We're going to give that a few minutes to burn, but as you can see, if you had some semi-wet tinder, this would really be great at getting it burning quickly. So guys, again, that's what I refer to as the ultimate fire starter, probably the best one you can carry in your equipment, have around the house. If you're burning leaves or whatever it is you need to start a fire with, these work exceptionally well. Now, if you wanted me to make a video specifically about the firewood and how to collect it naturally from the forest, I can do that. Just put fat wood in the description, in the comments down below, so that I'll tell me that you want me to tell you what fat wood is and how to collect it from the forest. If you don't want to collect it yourself, I'll put a link in the description to the fat wood where you can just have a supply of it. And again, using these two together really can make a difference on a camping trip if you have the space and the ability to carry it, because the fat wood does add a little bit of weight there. So guys, if you really like the video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. If you want to help support the channel, there's a Patreon, and I have all the products that I've used today in the link in the description. So guys, I really appreciate you watching, and have a great day.